System, specializing in grief and trauma healing. And my big push these days is demystifying and destigmatizing grief and trauma so that people can get those questions answered that prevent them from getting help in the first place. So I work really hard on making that clearer to people and providing a compassionate ear and some tools for actual healing growth. And I can be found at www.youcanhealyourgrief.com. Thanks much.
So I'll go next. Hey, I'm Mark Shutter. I am a recently published author of a memoir. You can see behind me this is my shameless plug of Cowboys Are Not Supposed to Cry. It's my story of my own grief event, which occurred 30 years ago, actually. And I stuffed the pain, wrote off from it, and dealt with mental health issues, I guess, because of that. And so the book is specifically geared towards men and what society and ourselves tell ourselves about the expectations of how we should grieve. So I've started on my own coaching business, specifically focused on men, helping them navigate those areas of grief that we often don't acknowledge.
My name is Dave Roberts. I'm a retired addictions professional. I worked in the addictions field as a addictions counselor and clinical supervisor for 27 years. I'm an adjunct professor of psychology and psychology child life at Utica University. I'm a writer, a blogger. I have recently co-authored a book with Reverend Patty Farino called When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister, which is in part about the spiritually transformative experience that she guided with me 7 years after my 18-year-old daughter Janine transitioned in 2003 as a result of cancer. I can be found at www.psychologyprofessorandminister.com. My big piece in terms of working and supporting individuals who have experienced catastrophic loss has been to help individuals integrate their grief, move through grief while re-engaging in a purpose-driven life, and also learning to transform the relationships with their loved ones so that they can forge a continuing bond, for the rest of our earthly years. And before we go any further, I got to throw out a quick shout out to my lovely granddaughter, Brianna Bridge, who just recently graduated from Navy boot camp school. She's in A school in San Antonio. So big shout out to my granddaughter and Janine's daughter, whom I love very much, and also to her friend Graf, who's also in A school as well, I believe in Pensacola. So, and I believe they're both watching tonight. So I just wanted to throw out a quick shout out. Thank you, Claire and Mark and Tony, for letting me do that.
Absolutely.
I wrote a book too. Everybody wrote a book, so I forgot my book.
Yep, I forgot mine too. Here we go. We might as well post them all. There we go.
You might as well.
And that's Tony, who seems like he's frozen.
It seems to be frozen.
Seems to be frozen.
There's a storm moving in, so we got a lot of.
Oh,
that's why.
That's it. Yep.
That'll do it. Have we all been on Tony's podcast?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Yeah.
I've recorded an episode. It hasn't been published yet.
Not yet. We're working on it. We're putting everything together for next season, so you guys are going to be in there as well. Let's talk about the mental health. Most of us have gone through grief. We know what it's like to struggle in our mental health, going through it. So let's start off that conversation, because I know a lot of people are kind of curious or very curious about, what to look for. And some people don't even know that they even struggle in their mental health. So let's start off the conversation.
How do people know they're having an issue?
Well, most people don't even understand that their mental health is a priority in all aspects, but even more so in most of our general understanding when it comes down to grief, you really have to pay attention to it, right? You
Yep.
really have to pay attention and take care of yourself, your mental health, because it can take you in so many different directions, you know. And as a man, I can tell you that it looks a lot different than what women think it is.
Mhm.
You know, and with the panel that we have today, you know, we have a lot of men up here, you know, and again, I was trying to bring more diversity to it, to bring more women into it, so we can get that understanding from all aspects. So, you know, depression, anxiety, the anger, the violence, you know, all of these things that come along with it.
Yep.
Let's open up that conversation.
Well, for me, one of the things that kind of comes up, and as a clinician, one of the things I tend to really caution individuals about is diagnosing the sadness of grief as depression, because
Mm,
when we experience catastrophic loss, sadness is part of the deal. Our emotions being out of whack, where we're having emotional ups and downs, mood swings, obsessive
yeah,
rumination, particularly about the last day of some of our loved one's life. All of those are the natural outpouring and outgrowth of grief, in addition to other physical and cognitive symptoms. So the first thing is don't categorize the sadness of grief as clinical depression. A lot of individuals who experience catastrophic loss don't have mental health difficulties. But however, if they
Right.
do, if they have a history of depression, anxiety, we need to make sure that they're taking care of their mental health in addition to taking care of their grief. Those two become priorities. The other thing, as far as men and women go, I think men grieve just as intensely as women do, and they have the same intense feelings. We just deal with it differently. Our grief tends, we feel, we deal with feelings differently. If we ask a guy how they're thinking, I can ask a guy how they're thinking, and they can tell me how they're thinking, because we do a lot of cognitive work. Once I ask them how they're thinking, then we can get into their feelings in kind of a backdoor way. But for a lot of guys, not all guys, but for a lot of guys, feelings are kind of something not our vocabulary. We're conditioned not to deal with our feelings, because if we do, for many guys, it's a sign of vulnerability and weakness, and we can't go there. And it's kind of counter indicated. But on the other side of the coin, there are guys that deal very intuitively with their feelings, and women who deal very instrumentally with their feelings. But those are just some of the things to be aware of. And for men, depression, if it does progress into depression, it's more irritability and anger. For women, it's more sadness and emotive. So those are, I think, to understand how men and women grieve differently as well too, can also give us some insight in terms of the mental health issues that may crop up, or how to deal with emotional ups and downs that are very intrinsic to crisis, which any type of catastrophic loss is categorized as a crisis. So that's what I got for now. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it for now.
Well, I would add to that if you're not dealing immediately with the facts of your loss and the grief process, it gets shunted into some other part of your life, whether it's your relationship or your job or your health. And I'm Mark, I don't know your story as personally, but I've seen this so many times, where it can be a year, a decade, where someone just doesn't talk about it. And meanwhile, all of these things go haywire, and people really truly don't necessarily make the connection back to the loss. So they can suddenly find themselves, they're divorced, they're hospitalized, they're having more accidents, and they don't they go, well, my life is out of control, I'm insane, and they try to medicate and this, that, and the other thing. But if you dig down far enough, you will very often find a loss and or a trauma, which are very hard to uncouple, that is at the root of it, and sometimes layers of that, but the layers have never been examined. So that's why the emotions are there, they're just buried, and it shoots off in other directions, and creates a lot of havoc in your life. So At some point, people hit a wall.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
need help.
I think that's very well said, Claire. I mean, you mentioned my story. Like I said, I'm 30 years removed from when my first wife died. She was 26. I was 28. She was just about to turn 27. I was 28. So I was we were in our early 20s. And, as a young man, this was 1993. It's like, where do you turn? We had no kids. It was just the two of us. And I was left with a sense of, I didn't know who I was anymore for a lot of years. And looking back now, I could not have written my book 30 years ago. I just wrote the book and published in the last year. But looking back now, and listening to you guys talk, one of the things that popped up to me was, how do we define mental health? Because, I just pushed everything down, didn't talk about it after a year or so, got re-involved in a relationship, married a beautiful woman who I love dearly to this day. We've got a daughter who's turning 18 in a week, or actually in a few days. So it's like life has moved on, if you will. But for many years, I didn't move forward, if that makes sense, because everything was stuck down inside of me and I carried all this pain inside. I didn't talk about it. I didn't share it with anybody. What's the point? She's dead. She's not coming back. So I've got to move forward. So did that affect my mental health? Was I ever diagnosed as having, some type of mental disorder? No. But there was a sadness that I carried in my heart that this is as good as it's going to get. It's never going to get any better. And I had to work through that, which I finally did in the last 5 years when I actually started seeing a counselor and started working through some of these things that I had buried for so long.
Yeah.
And that's the issue, is we carry these things with us because of the trauma, and then whatever lies we're telling ourselves, or even the lies that society and other people tell us about our trauma. And
that's the stigma piece. That's the stigma piece that I talk about. Yeah.
My book talks a lot about that, from a man's perspective of, this is what especially as a young man, this is what I thought I was supposed to do. You're young, she's in a better place, you'll be okay, trying to get remarried and, move on. You've got a lot of life ahead of you. All well and good. And I did that, and I'm happy I've done that. But you still carry that trauma. And if you don't acknowledge and deal with that trauma, you carry it with you. And I still carry some of it with me to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain things that hit me. So it's just, how do you define mental health? I mean, there's the diagnosis and the real disorders, but then there's also that level. And Dave, you talked about that level of sadness.
Yep.
There's a lot of sadness in this world, and we're going to carry sadness with us. So.
And carrying sadness is not necessarily. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you were good.
Carrying sadness is not necessarily a bad thing. And one of the things that I think we get tied up in is a couple of different things. One is the stigma that's attached to mental health in terms of expressing that you have an issue with mental health.
Massive.
It's a massive stigma. In this super positive society that a lot of individuals have, believed happiness is the key to fulfillment, there's no room for negative emotions such as sadness or anger. But in reality, the saddest people I know turn out to be the most compassionate souls I know and do the greatest service work.
Yeah.
For some individuals, anger, as long as it's not destructive, may give that person the energy to get through a particular moment. So necessarily what is categorized as emotions that are intrinsic to certain mental health conditions are not necessarily bad. It all depends on how we shift our perspective with them. The other thing you had mentioned that stuck with me is the fact that, like what I heard you say, and I'm paraphrasing this, and I've been no stranger to grief. I've danced with loss since I've been 5 years old, but obviously the transition of my daughter Janine just put me into a whole new level of dissociation. I mean, I was disconnected from the world that I thought I knew, that I thought I could control, that I thought was predictable. And literally, I would look at myself in the mirror and I didn't know who the heck I was. If you asked me to find the guy I was at I was 47 years old, and I'm at almost 20 years ago, I couldn't. You need a search party to find him, and a posse on top of that.
I often say that's like 5 Claires ago.
Yeah. But the thing is like, I mean, with mental health, if we don't acknowledge or integrate our grief, it's going to come out in different ways. We're going to feel a sense of emptiness. We're going to feel a sense of disconnection. We're going to feel a sense of, well, this is only going to get as good as it gets. And there's always a sense of dysthymy or blue mood as a result of that we think, well, this is as good as it's going to get. But we can empower ourselves to make it better than we think it's going to be. if we choose to embrace our perspective, embrace support, embrace other individuals who can show us that there is life after loss.
Yeah,
And we can
absolutely.
still, so.
And when you
No,
when you've been through a long history of things, um, it whether you've been through a whole string of things or whether it's one massive thing. I mean, it was a string, and then the loss of my mother that flipped my life upside down. I've had dozens of losses since then as well, and it's all about how you move. That's the difference between move on and move through,
Yep.
right? Moving on
I say move forward.
usually means skipping over.
Yeah.
and ultimately it's going to tap you on the shoulder and go, no, I'm still here, and I require some care and some attention, some compassion, and some healing. It's all about how it's showing up in your life. You know, I just had somebody new come to me recently and said, I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm getting up and I'm going to work, but it's not me. They're so disconnected from, because it's been an ongoing thing for like a decade that they've been going through. And so now they have to find out who they are. And that's our starting point is, I don't even know who I am anymore. It can really get to that point where you feel like you are invisible to yourself.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a red flag going up of, there's, let's look at that. Let's talk about that, you know?
Well, yeah, I think that's well said, Claire, because there's, you know, and especially, and again, I'm talking specifically from my own experience, you know, there's a loss of a relationship and a loss of a person, a physical presence, but then there's all these other losses that we encounter in life, losses of job, losses of income that may have no tangible, I don't know, but there's still, you are so wrapped up in that sometimes the identity piece comes in of who am I now as I move forward? Who am I going to be now? And how is that going to impact me? How am I going to let that impact me? And whether we acknowledge it or not, it does impact us. We're going to carry that. That's part of who our thinking comes around and part of who we are moving forward. So there's a big challenge there to, I don't like the word accept because I don't like that we accept our losses, but we have to acknowledge them and move through
I get
them,
that.
you know? Yeah,
That's a loaded word.
You accept that it happened, but I don't accept that it should have happened necessarily. It's like, but I acknowledge that it happened. That's the reality, and let's move forward and try to deal with that.
We can't change it if we don't acknowledge that it happened, right?
Yeah.
The way I describe it in my practice as well as in my book is weaving the loss into the landscape of your life. Because you can't undo that, right? You can't unlose it. But as you wisely said, there's other tangents, other tentacles of loss that happen. It can be loss of time. It can be loss of expectation of what might be. It can be layers and layers of things that you're not really aware of. You can be sad and not really understand the true depth of everything that you're sad about. So, but all of these things can be, you know, pull the strings, pull the pieces and give them some time and some care. And before you know it, you feel better. You know, how did that happen? That's better. Okay. Phew. Okay.
And you know, I think the other thing that I think the audience should be aware of is that with every loss that's due to death, there's also symbolic loss that goes along with it. Mark alluded to, you know, you're talking about the loss of a future. You're talking about the loss of a present. You're talking about dreams for relationships, or dreams for intact relationships. All of that plays a role. It can exacerbate the emotions and intensity of grief, which makes it look like, well, the person's got a mental health condition.
Exactly.
But these are all these other things that also need to be addressed that really make the grief journey so intense, particularly in early grief.
Absolutely.
Because of all the symbolism that we're dealing with as a result of our losses due to death.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the most common questions I get. Am I crazy? No, it can make you feel like you're crazy,
Mhm.
but absolutely not. I don't use that word in my practice. But sometimes people get dismissed and re-stigmatized from that, where they go, oh, that's crazy. Oh, you didn't heal in a year? Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how that works.
No.
And I would even take that a step further, because that's because I've thought that in my own brain. Am I crazy at times in the past? And I've had clients mention to me that it's like, I feel like I'm going crazy, and I'm just like, it's like an out of body experience almost. I've had clients say that to me, and it's like, there's that stigma of, am I going crazy? But then there's also of the person hearing you say that. What are they thinking? It's like, oh, maybe they are. They may not voice it, but now all of a sudden you set up a perception with them of how they view you. And that was one of the things I go back to. It's like, I didn't want anybody feeling sorry for me for dying, because I'm a man. I can handle this. I can take it. It's like, so I didn't talk about it because I didn't want the sympathy, and I didn't want them to view me. And I didn't want to admit that I was sad. I didn't want to admit that it hurt, because I didn't want them to view me as less than, vulnerable, weak, all those things that play into the stereotypical what a male masculinity should be, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and it took me years to come to that conclusion, that it's okay for men to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to miss her and love my life now, because I am very happy and I'm very content and I'm doing what I love doing and I'm trying to help people. And it's like, that's a good thing. That's a great thing. So but it took a lot of years for me personally to get to that point. So.
Well, time is relative when it comes to the progression from the raw pain of loss to a point where you feel you've moved through grief. You feel that you can re-engage in a purpose-driven life. Time is relative when it comes to that. It's going to take as long as it's going to take.
Right.
And, for everybody, it's different. And as long as there's movement, time is relative.
And the weakness and vulnerability piece is huge, because some people believe that because they've been taught by society. Some people believe that because it's been dangerous in their family to be weak and vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, and then you layer the loss on top of that, then you've got a whole stack. I often have people come for a loss, but you go back along the chain far enough, and there are also other things hiding back there that have also never been dealt with. And you have to be able to deal with the entire palette to be able to really get how is this person wired and how can you help them? Because sometimes just dealing with that one loss is only the thing that's on the surface now. But that vulnerability is dangerous piece. Some people get taught that very early. And so it's a very delicate, compassionate, slow process to be able to peel that back and give them tools to feel secure enough to be able to do the healing work.
And also vulnerability is something that is also not a bad thing, because being vulnerable means that I have a feeling that I trust that Mark, or I trust that Tony, or I trust that Claire at that particular moment can help me work through that or make sense out of it. And it's opening myself up for a period for that moment without any expectation that we're going to have a trusting relationship down the road. It's utilizing whatever support, or as I like to call it, those transient angels that come into our lives that help us get through that moment. And the other thing, and I got to mention this, if I may, real quickly before I forget, the other thing that I think is a misconception about men and emotions is that one of the things is that I know for me, I was conditioned to, be the problem solver in the family, take care of my family. And it hurt me, especially after my daughter transitioned, when I would see my wife in emotional pain, my kids in emotional pain, because I couldn't fix that. I couldn't fix it. It was my job to kind of keep everything together, and I couldn't fix it. Their pain I could not fix, and that affected me emotionally. And that also affected, for a moment, my mental health, my questions about my own self-worth, my own self-efficacy. But that was all part of the grief process, not a part of any type of ongoing mental health or depression or bipolar disorder or generalized anxiety disorder. It was a part of the catastrophic circumstances and the crisis that occurred in my life for having to suddenly bury a child.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can
Well,
definitely understand that. Like I said, like suffering in my mental health, I didn't even understand it at first, right? I didn't even know. No one ever taught me that I could suffer in my mental health, right? No, we never discussed it. We never said, "Hey, these things can happen." So I never knew. So my whole, the whole journey through life, trying to figure this thing out, struggling with depression, anxiety, and replacing it with severe anger and violence. I didn't realize, I didn't know, not until later on, till where life kind of slowed down a little bit. And, the recent losses, with my father, my brother, my mother, my son, um, it just took me into a different realm to where I was in a fog. So that's what I mean. Most people don't even know that they're suffering with their mental health, because it is like a fog. It is, it is one of those things that if you're not paying attention, they take you to a whole different direction than anything that you ever thought, right? you know um Bad decisions, and I made a bunch of those, which I didn't realize, which was part of my mental health, right? I made a lot of those, just being angry, wanted to be isolated, not wanted to be bothered with anyone, because I didn't feel that anyone would understand, or I had a sense of shame and guilt because of everything that I had gone
Yeah.
through. Like,
Yeah.
who would look at me and go, this is a highly functional individual, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, out of all of the things, and I used to think like the person on the outside looking in, looking at me, going, "Yeah," and this is just my own perception, but I used to think to myself, like, I wonder if they thinking like, man, this guy must be a real POS. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Yeah.
and for the audience out there, I'm trying to keep it PG, because I know there may be children watching and everything like that. But just to let you guys know that what we're saying is for educational purposes. So make sure that you understand that, and take the things that we say and be able to write them down and implement them into your daily lives. These are real life situations, and the mental health aspect is something that needs to be talked about. Now, back to what I was saying. Like, I was, yeah, I forgot to put that in at the beginning. Parental advisory. But no, I did. I struggled to no end. And as a man, as a man in society that have walked the path of loneliness, there was nothing but severe loneliness, right? And trying to deal with those day-to-day things on your own is, I wouldn't say impossible, because I did it, but it is hard. It is extremely hard when you don't understand. When you don't understand that, like, I have a problem with being around people because it gives me extreme anxiety. Um, not not because of the individual, because I'm always thinking, what does this person know about me? Do they know? Do they know what I've gone through? Or are they judging me? What is the rational thoughts behind these things? Also, depression. There's been many a times where I've suffered in my own depression. And I know there's a lot of men out there that have, maybe not even understanding it. And that's okay. These things are totally normal for you not to understand. You cannot understand something that you never experienced. And that's the biggest thing. Like, don't beat yourself down too bad, because most of us men, most of us on this panel right now, have beaten ourselves down because of that, because we didn't understand, and have led us down some really dark roads. You know, and there's a path to coming out. There really is, but it's individual. But it takes people to sit with you and understand that your path is going to be individual, and you have to hold that space with you as you figure it out. Like, you don't have to struggle by yourself. Is what it was for.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's one of the greatest privileges of doing this work, is when someone says to you, "You're the first person who's ever listened to me.
Mm-hmm.
You're the first person who's ever heard me," which is two different things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Very much.
there, back when I was doing Reiki, I had my Reiki practice still open, because I'm also a Reiki master teacher. When I would have someone on the table, I'd be working on them, and I would pick up their hand and hold their hand, and their tears would just come, and I would go, oh, are you okay? What's happening? Are you all right? And I'll never forget this woman said to me, "This is the first time someone has held my hand without asking something of me, without needing something or taking something from me." And she was blown away. She had never had that in her entire life, and I'd never heard that before, and it's stuck with me. It's not something that's easy to explain or be aware of, much less understand. But so it's that subtle thing of that human connection is part of the healing process. Yeah. And when we shut ourselves off, and when we are dealing with all of the misunderstandings and the stereotypes and the stigmas, they all get in the way. Mm-hmm. And they can keep us from healing for years and years and years. It's just that same new person said to me, not only have they lost who they are, but they've never asked for help in their entire lives for anything.
Exactly.
Oh, that's huge. And I go, oh my God, you asked for help. That's amazing. That's, that's incredible. So please just give yourself some credit for that, because that's extraordinary.
And as men, it's really hard to ask for help, right? Yeah. And what I started to find out as well, it's not just the men. I've talked to women as well who have struggled with asking for help. So I just want everybody to think it's not just one gender or the next. You know what I'm saying? We both struggle. We both genders. We all struggle with asking for help. It's a pride and ego thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Like for me to ask for help was like the biggest thing that I was against. I was like, nope, I'm not going to ask for help because I don't want anybody to judge me, right? Or I'm not going to ask for help because I don't want anyone to think that I was weak. And this is the mentality. Well, I can tell you what, as a young man being out here in society, asking for help was the best thing that I ever did, because of the simple fact of it opened up the doors for me to get that necessary help and to begin to understand my walk of healing, right? In this mental health journey, because I could tell you, struggling with suicidal ideology or
ideation.
Right. Well, I know it's one of them, right? Ideation. Somebody's going to correct me on there.
Hey, this is your podcast. You could.
Hey, that's all right.
Hey, you know what? This is our podcast, man. You know what I'm saying? Because this is what we do. We're here to add value to people's lives, to talk about these difficult conversations and topics and things like that to help others, right? So this is ours. I can't do this without anyone. But also, you know what I'm saying, sharing our experiences through this can help someone else as well. And as I was saying before, struggling with all of these things, I almost became a number, a statistic, right?
Yep.
Because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to talk with anyone. And most of all, I didn't want to ask anybody for help because there was a side of me like, what if I ask for help and this person says anything? I'm on the defensive. I'm going to punch you in your mouth, right? And that's coming from a man. That's that masculine side, right? Like, man, as soon as you say something to me, pow, even though I ask for help, right? So it's a conflict of interest. Or conflict of conflict of interest, and
conflict of priorities.
Conflict of priorities, right? On one hand, you know what I'm saying, I need help, but on the other hand, I don't want you to tell me what to do. because I don't want you to tell me that I'm wrong about what I'm feeling, because I don't want to believe that I'm suffering
Yeah.
in silence in my mental health.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
am also on the verge of falling apart and taking my own life because of my own pride and ego.
And fear.
And well, it wasn't necessarily. Now, let me say that for some, it could be fear.
Yeah.
For my own self, no, it wasn't fear. It wasn't fear. It was more of, if you judge me, I'm gonna punch you out.
Yeah.
You know,
Anger?
there was no middle ground for me. Like, if you judge me, I'm going to punch you out because I'm trying to be vulnerable with you. So
Mhm.
if you take that vulnerability and you turn it inside out, I'm going to punch you in your mouth. At least that was the thought behind it, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
defensive. It's
But,
not
and
fear,
you,
defensiveness.
yeah. And, you know,
And that's coming from a man.
yeah. And, you know, just to throw out another perspective on this as well, too. A lot of times we run those scenarios in our head. The other thing that many of us have is fear of change. And if we're not used to asking for help and we are in a position where we know we need to, sometimes, you know, asking for help is a change in behavior. And even though we want that change, we still fear it because we're used to the old standard. We know how to work within the old standard of behavior. So sometimes, and I've had clients, Tony, who've run those same scenarios in their head for that reason, is that they use that as kind of roadblocks to say, well, to kind of insulate against, the fear of change. But that's just another perspective to throw out there. The other thing that I wanted to mention real quickly is what Claire was saying about creating space for somebody to share their story and having the first person said being it's allowed for that to happen. One of the best things we can do to help any individuals through mental health crisis is to share a space for their story to unfold and
Yeah.
not judge it and take a look at their mental health as simply separate that behavior that's contributing to the mental health issues from their worth as a person. And we not classify them as depressed or borderline. You classify them as an individual who's having challenges with depression or anxiety, but you keep the individual self-worth separate from the behavior that's impacting that. And you treat the behavior and you while empowering and celebrating the strengths that individual brings to the table. And that also helps our presence can be the most important thing, and allowing stories to unfold without judgment can be the most important thing. To me, that is the greatest gift I can get as an individual who's committed to service with bereaved individuals, is their stories and creating space for that, because they inspire me, and I consider that to be the greatest gift if they trust me with it.
That's
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And let's unpack that a little
Well-
bit, and the reason why I would like to unpack that, because there's so much more that goes into it, right? There's a trauma that can contribute to it, you know what I'm saying, that leads back into their childhood. Now, I'm one of those guys that I would rather walk with a person backwards in their life to figure out where that trauma came from, and then walk with them forward until we can get it to a point to where they're on a path of healing as well. So it all coincides with one another, I believe. And like it's like I was talking with I do believe Mark and Jeffrey. He's not here right now, and I wish, but it's like an onion, right? You have to unfold that onion. Your mental health is
A lot
that
of
onion.
layers.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers that goes along with it. There's that onion, right? Like the grief is a trigger, and this is only from my perspective. So there might be other people that have different ways that they look at it, but from my perspective, the grief is a trigger to everything else that is happening to your life, right? And once you can start unfolding those things, you can get to the root cause. But it's a hard journey backwards.
Mhm.
Because moving forward, you never see the problems. Moving backwards, you see everything that has happened to you, and you have to be truthful with yourself. It's an authentic journey of understanding of who you truly are and getting rid of the things that go against who you are, which is the trauma, right? It's unfolding all of these things, these moments that change your life. Go back in there. Let's understand, let's heal from those moments, right? And so when I tell people, like, take your time, it's not a marathon. Your mental health is important because that's going to provide you the strength to move forward. But let's deal with the things that kept you from moving forward first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
one of the things, Tony, you were talking about asking for help. I think there's another element to that. From my own personal experience, people would ask what could they do? I had no idea. I had no idea what I needed or how I needed it. So my default answer was, I'm good. Things are fine.
Right.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah.
You just default to that because you don't know. I mean, if you lose your identity and it's like you've got all these questions now just circulating in your head, it's like, I don't know what I need. So that leads me to this, and this is part of what I do with clients, and it's actually based on the passage in the book of Job in the Bible, 2:13, where Job's 3 friends come and sit down with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights with nobody speaking a word because they saw that his pain was very great, which goes into what both of you said about sitting with somebody and holding space. How often do we do that in this day and age when we want the quick fix? I'm already formulating the answer to what you need to do in my head. We don't just sit with people and hold space and acknowledge their grief, acknowledge their pain. And if they want to talk, allow them to talk without offering simple solutions. It's a hard thing to do. I struggle with it still to this day, doing that for people, because I've been through this. I can tell you what to do or what worked for me. So, but going back to that, it's like sometimes they don't know what to ask for. We don't know what to ask for, you know?
Yeah. And what I tell my students in my, because I teach a psychology class and I teach a death, dying, and bereavement class at Utica University. I tell my students, your greatest asset as a therapist is going to be your ability to listen as opposed to your ability to provide solutions. Because if you can establish yourself as a listener, let that person's story unfold, their history unfold, one, you've empowered them to do something that they probably have not been able to do with somebody they perceive to be in an authority as an authority figure. And the second thing is you're getting the total picture, and now you can offer observations about in clinical impressions or observations or suggestions. But you can't do that unless you establish yourself as a listener first. And it's really difficult to sit in the quiet and listen because, like you said, Mark, our head is going to, if this for me, I'd be doing this, I'd be doing that. And that's all well and good. But again, what works for us may not work for somebody else. We need to get the full picture.
Yes.
And in order to, again, be able to provide some observations that are going to make sense based on where they're coming from, based on their inherent strengths, and also based on the door that they're willing to open for it.
Exactly.
Because, and that's the door we have to go through. We can't just barge through a door that we think is going to be important for them to understand if they're not ready to understand it. But even every resistive client is going to give you some type of a crack in a door. Your job is, if you're listening, you're going to see what door is open and you're going to walk through that door. Once you walk through that with them, then you can go through other doors that you can suggest be open.
And that's interesting because I did get into a conversation with someone discussing just that right there. And my reply to this individual was, everyone is different. So your approach has to be different. If you have a one size fit all, you're going to miss something. And you're going to miss, the best part of the journey, which is getting people to go through the door or to get individuals to open up the door to allow you to venture into that room with them. Right? You know what I'm saying? So if you have a one size fit all, you know what I'm saying? Oh, this is the one way that we're going to do it. And it must work. That means that you compartmentalize yourself to one sort of individual.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas if you're looking at the whole, you have to be diverse in your approach. Like Dave said, everyone is different. So your approach has to be different with everyone. I don't care if it's in a group setting. The group setting is just opening up the doors, right? But if you're doing an individual, you have to pay attention to an individual and allow them to
Yep.
invite you into that space.
Yep.
And I would also add that some people, you need to help them build the door,
Right. Yes.
not just open the door,
Yeah.
but actually help them construct it. And does the door open on the right side? Does it open on the left side? What kind of handle does it have? Is it have stairs up or stairs down? So being able to figure out each individual person's door and then help them to, maybe they'll open it this much when they start, and then, slam it shut. I can't. No,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
going there. Not ready yet. That's all right. That's all right. The door's there. It's not going anywhere. Now we know where it is. We can go
Yes.
back there. That's okay. Maybe next time they'll open it a little further, or
Mhm.
maybe they'll open it enough to go, that's not the right door. Okay, I need a different door. Okay, well,
Right,
let's go
right.
one over here. So it's that process. It's the process of getting to know what works
And
in
what
each.
that's right.
What
Yeah.
doesn't work.
You know,
It's-
and it's being diverse in your, as I said
Yeah.
before, it's being diverse in your approach.
Yeah.
Because no two individuals are going to respond to the same thing.
right.
So you have to be open. You have to be mindful of this individual. And what I've tried to explain to people is that you have to be in those moments.
Mhm.
Well, no matter when a person is going through a mental health breakdown, they're not in the moment that you see,
No.
right? In the present moment, but their mind is taking them to somewhere else, to where if it's in, their early adulthood or their childhood or anything like that. Our at least what I perceive as my job is to be in those moments with you, not to bring you out of it too much more, than what you're ready for, but to be in those moments and to walk with you until we can figure out how can we
Mhm.
heal
Mhm.
from there, right?
Mhm.
Because as Claire said, these are building blocks.
Yeah.
These are building blocks. We don't know if they, if they're willing to open up that door. I say if they're in the same room or if they're in the same conversation with you, you have the biggest battle out of the way, because they have chosen to be in that moment with you, right? They've chosen to be in that space with you. So respect that space. Visit with them, just a little bit, not a whole lot, because most people don't, they back up a little bit, and that's fine too. Back up. I'll back up too. But and then when you're ready, like you said, Claire, you know what I'm saying, you may get that door to open up a little bit. They may open it up and find out it's not the right door, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And I explain to people, this is where you have to have patience. You have to have a lot of patience. And what I mean by that, you have to be able to sit down and watch a blade of grass grow,
Yeah.
right? From seedling to a full-grown plant,
Mhm.
because you don't know whether or not that plant has fruit or flowers on it. And if it has flowers and fruits, then you got a bonus. But if it has flowers, then you have the opportunity to get the fruit. But you have to watch that blade of grass grow.
And you
Right.
have to nurture that
You have
fruit
to
or those flowers.
right?
And you have to pay attention. Sometimes the plant has thorns.
So
Yep.
sometimes I've been
Sometimes.
close a few times.
You gotta be careful.
I think we all have, right?
Yep.
We walk with these individuals. Sometimes those plants do have thorns, and that's okay too. I've been poked.
It's got to be okay. You got to deal with whatever grows.
Exactly. I'll put a Band-Aid on it and something to heal it up, and I'm going to keep it moving, right? But I'm still going to be there. And that's
Right.
that's the whole thing. Like, your mental health is
course.
important. It's the core of who you are, aside from your physical, emotional, and spiritual health, right? And depending on which approaches that you take to it, it can line out everything else for everything.
Yeah.
Right. You have to take care of one step at a time. It's not a process.
Yeah.
I feel like it's incumbent on us who stand as healers to others to make sure that our own mental health is nurtured as well.
Yep.
Yep.
Because every once in a while, something occurs, whether it's with a client or a session or in your not client life, where you go, oh, I need to look at that. I need to do my own stuff so that I can be as clear as possible for them, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want things to get in the way. And then occasionally and we all talk about our own experiences as part of our work,
Right,
which
right.
I think is really, really important. And it's not always something that's been common in the counseling/therapy/healing world.
Right.
Is you're not supposed to talk about your own stuff. And I disagree with that pretty stringently,
yeah.
because it's not personal.
Yeah,
It's not
I do too.
authentic.
Yeah.
And, as somebody who spent many years in the other chair, Dave, we've talked about this, is that if you're pouring your heart out and showing that vulnerability and saying, I need help, and you get a blank stare and, some scribbling, bibbling notes, but no
Yeah.
no recognition, no human connection. You've got to have that.
Mhm.
And whether it's in the same room or on a Zoom, whatever it is, you can tell
Oh yeah.
when someone gets you. And
Yeah.
it's got to be part of that, because of those stigmas and because of the gaslighting and rejection that so many people get before they get to someone who will really do that authentic listening.
Yeah. And all client individuals want is a sense of human connection. They're not going to care how many degrees you have after your name. If they're coming into crisis, can I trust this person?
Yeah.
Can I trust this person's going to help me get through this crisis? Is this person genuine enough that I can see myself building a future relationship with them? That's what's the important thing. Clinical expertise is great, but they're looking, can I connect with this individual? Can they give me what I need now?
And it's a continuing source of frustration. And maybe some of our streaming viewers can comment on this. It's a continuing source of frustration to run across professionals where you go to someone who you hope, or who's on your insurance, or who you've been recommended to, or for whatever reason you think you're doing the right thing going to a clinician or whomever, and it's not working. And it's a huge problem of, there's the spaghetti after your name, and then there's your ability, then there's your authenticity. People are asking for your trust,
Exactly.
and that has to be earned, because some of us are and I'll just speak for myself. Some of us are extraordinarily damaged before we open that first door. And years and years of, not just knocking on a bunch of wrong doors, but banging on doors and begging for someone to listen. And that's sometimes where the anger comes from, of, please hear me, please help me. And getting all of the nonsense back. And it makes people not want to ask for help because of how much effort each time takes. Eventually, some folks just give up.
Yeah. And if you want to help into somebody have an immediate impact on somebody's mental health, create a safe, structured place where they feel that they can just be who they need to be for however long you're with. And that's safety and structure and consistency.
Yes.
You do that, they're going to engage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's understanding how to hold space for that individual, right?
Back to that.
And I've taught many classes on this. Holding space with an individual is visiting with a person, right? No matter if you go to their place or you visit with them, especially if they invite you in, you visit with them. So you become a great host. And the thing about a great host is, a great host makes sure that you have everything that you need, right? As the host, you want to make sure that your guest, even though you're in this individual space, you're still a guest. And now you become the host, because the roles have reversed just within a matter of seconds. So now that you've been invited in, you become the host. Is there anything that you need? I always say to the guys that I talk with, if I go to the house, is there anything I can get you? Don't worry about it. You sit there, because for one, in my opinion, I want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to have to worry about the things that I need, right?
Yeah.
So tell me where the cups are. If you need some water, you need something to drink, you need something to eat, I'll go get it for you, right? I'll come to your house. I'll be that host for you. And to allow you the comfortability of not having to worry about that.
Yep.
That way we can focus on the things that that are more beneficial for you, right? What's really going on with you? Let me
Yeah.
sit in this moment with you. You know, if you need to cry, if you don't need me to say anything, I am okay with that too.
Yeah.
It's so often, and we've probably all had this experience where someone shows their emotion or has to blow their nose or whatever it is, and they immediately, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Right. Don't apologize.
No.
Okay.
Don't
And
Sorry.
apologize.
Apologize. This is
You know,
your yeah,
because
right.
that's
That
the problem.
immediate. Oh my God, I did something wrong.
Right.
No,
Oh,
you
yeah,
didn't.
right.
No,
And
you
you
didn't.
notice you get that from a lot of people who have been through extreme trauma, men
Yeah.
and women both. Do not get it twisted. Just
Yeah.
because we have, you know what I'm saying, the men and women differences, there's a whole lot of similarities. There's a lot of men out there that have gone through traumatic situations that if you put them in the wrong situation, you will get a response from them that you never expect.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with women.
Yep.
And I want people to understand that your mental health is not one of those things that, you know, that is so far fetched from each other that it has to have conflict with one another. There's so many similarities
Yeah.
to each
Yeah.
other that
Yep.
if we focus on the similarities, then we can get to the individual parts of you,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? But it gotta stop separating ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's the commonalities for sure. It's also the connection that we can't pull apart mental health, physical health,
Mm,
emotional health, spiritual health. It's all the same thing. We are one being,
right.
right? So, but this is a particular thing in our culture. We love to pull those things apart, and we go, well, I don't understand why. I've done this one piece. Why isn't my whole life fixed? And I'm like, well, you only fixed one of your 4 flat tires.
Mhm.
Your car ain't going to
Well,
go unless we work on the other 3.
Well,
Well, one of them's got a bent rim, and one of them's got no air, and one of them, has a nail, and somebody stole the 4th one. So they all need different things.
Yeah.
They all need
Yeah.
different things, but
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
run on just that fixing the one piece without it all fitting together.
Yeah.
and
So you really end up taking care of the whole being.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what it's all about. I mean, when we
Well,
talk about grief and mental health, we have to look at the whole individual.
yep.
And
And,
then, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
No,
Tom.
no, you're fine, bro. You're
Okay.
fine.
All right. Here's the other thing that you mentioned, and you talked about looking at the past, and this is something that is incumbent upon all of us who've experienced catastrophic loss. And looking at the past doesn't mean we're ignoring the present. We're looking at what got us to the present,
Mhm.
because there is a whole with Native American Crow medicine, and you've heard me talk about this before, is honor the past as your teacher, honor um, honor the past as your teacher, honor the present as your creation, and honor the future as your inspiration. That's from the late Jamie Sams, a Seneca, Seneca and Cherokee elder who wrote a
Elder,
book
yeah.
called Medicine Cards
Mhm.
about teachings of nature and animals. And if we take a look at every decision, if we take a look at who we are today, everything in the past has something to do with that. When we're grieving, it's
Yeah.
incumbent upon us to take a look at everything we stood for, all our values, all our priorities that dictated our past behavior, how we saw the world. We ask ourselves, what changes, what stays, what gets eliminated, what gets modified. And together, we rebuild a foundation for ourselves and of our lives that is going to be different than it was prior to loss, but it's going to be what's going to help us adapt and continue to move through and continue to re-engage in life. The pieces that we rebuild the foundation of our lives with are going to be drastically different based on what we learned about our past and based on the current circumstances of our loss. And we need to accept that and not look at the fact, well, the person's going to his past, he must be depressed. No, he's going to his past because that's a natural progression of integrating their grief and re-engaging in a purpose-driven life in the present and
Exactly.
seeing what's got us there.
Mhm.
I feel like I want to ask Mark what he thinks, because you have the tremendous joy of sharing this with three people who talk a lot. So
Yeah. Yes. And Mark, I apologize too. If,
Oh
you know,
no,
sorry about that,
I,
man.
Oh, don't get Mark. Hey, Mark,
yeah,
talk.
don't get me started.
Talk.
You want
Okay.
to be careful.
that's all
I
right.
have so many thoughts running through my head and comments, and it's hard to nail them down, because everything that you all are talking about just speaks volumes, and I'm coming from not a place of a clinical place. I'm coming from just my own personal experience, of
Sure.
stepping into this arena to help other men, women who've been through loss. I've walked this valley of the shadow of death, if you will, watching my first wife go through cancer and die at a very young age. So, and then having to turn and walk away from her into a whole new life and a whole new thing. So, and one of the things that was brought up about trust, and people with letters behind their name and stuff. I went to a counselor, and I was lucky. I had a very good counselor who shared some of his own grief experiences with me, and we talked. But I also think there's an element of, when I've shared my story with certain people over the years, whether they be family, friends, coworkers, sometimes you're trying to be vulnerable and you're trying to connect, and they look at you with this fear in their eyes, and it's like they don't want to hear it, and they want to run from it, and so you just kind of shrink back. You immediately, I take my story back. I'm taking everything back. I'm sorry I shared anything, and
Yes.
and that affects your mental health. You walk
Yes,
away
it
going,
does.
I must be damaged.
Oh, yeah.
There's something wrong with me, because but
That's
that's on
one of the
them.
many
That's on
stigmas,
them,
right?
because they couldn't sit in silence or acknowledge the pain. They're
That's right.
running from something probably, and having to turn that thought process around. And again, come against those lies that we tell ourselves that it's all about me, because it's not all about me. It's about, we're all experiencing things differently. And one of the quotes that I love, and this is from Stevenson Jenkinson in Die Wise, and I talk a lot about death because that's my major experience. And even though I've had other grief experiences, he talks about, loving someone is not inevitable in this lifetime, but loving someone who will die is. We're all going to die at some point. We're going to have a loved one die. That's just the unfortunate reality of this physical life. So not being willing to talk about that. And for a lot of years, I didn't want to talk about it, but I'm at a point now where it's like, why not? Let's talk about it. It's like, it's going to happen. But then it comes to a point too, where you talked about people being vulnerable and then crying and then immediately apologizing.
Yeah.
I've had people, coworkers, family, friends, clients in the recent past who've exact same experience. They start crying, and I look at them and go, never apologize for being human. You are being a human being right now.
Exactly.
And I thank you, and then appreciating the fact that they're willing to actually share their story with you, because we don't get that appreciation from a lot of people. It's like, because they don't want to hear the story, or wherever they're at, they can't hear the story. They're not in a place to hear the story, and that's on them, and it's not a negative thing. It's just, they're not at that place. So allowing people that space, I think, was spot on, of just, allowing them to be human, whatever that brings, anger, fear, sadness, and being comfortable with that uncomfortability if it's uncomfortable, because sometimes it is uncomfortable, because I don't have the words to fix this. I cannot fix this for you. I can walk alongside you and help you, but
I can help you through that to the other side.
Yeah.
When you talk about your mental health, that is definitely something that's individualized, right? It's something that we sit with individuals as they figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, like everyone wants this magic formula.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no magic formula to it.
No.
It's understanding yourself. It's being vulnerable to what you need, and surrounding yourself with people who will give you exactly that. Right? You know what I'm saying? The patience, the understanding. Sometimes you may need someone to tell you flat out, this is what you're doing. Right? But it all depends on the individual. So your approach has to be universal in it, because I've seen too many people, and the sad truth about the work that we do is that sometimes people do make bad decisions, and they do make the choices that they make affect a lot of other people. And we'll talk about that at some other point in in another part in one of the other episodes. But we're losing people back to back.
Yeah.
You bet.
We really are,
bet.
because they're afraid.
Mhm.
They don't want to talk, right? Or they don't know how to talk, or they just don't understand,
Mhm.
Or they don't know who to talk to.
or they don't
Yeah.
know who to talk.
Or the other
Yeah.
question is, oh, am I just going to sit and like talk about it? That's going to
Yeah.
help. And go,
Exactly.
well, actually, yeah. And they don't.
Yeah.
Well,
Things.
and here's the other thing too. Some people aren't really have great verbal skills. They're not really great talkers, but they're creative. They can collage, they can draw, they
You
can
bet.
do a bunch of different things. So you find out, well, how have they expressed themselves in other losses? What have helped them? And if it's drawing, if it's collage work,
You
then
bet.
you set them up with some resources. So people have different ways of expressing and working through trauma.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I know Tony mentioned too that with trauma, men and women, doesn't matter. We all carry it. We all carry it in some way, particularly in our bodies. We carry it,
Mhm.
That's it.
and
That's where it
that's
sits.
universal. And the other thing with Mark, where you talked about people apologize. You guys mentioned people apologizing for crying. When I facilitate support groups, I say one of the things, we have tissues for a reason.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you want to cry, don't apologize for it. I said, I'm pretty sure the flood insurance is paid too, so just let it go. Just let it go, man.
The joke I always make in my office
let
was,
it-
it's okay, I buy it in bulk. Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
just let it go.
Exactly.
Just- you don't have to ground like one tissue into dust. Take multiples. We got 20.
Take a bunch of them, whatever
Take a
you
bunch
need.
of them, man.
That's
Whatever you
how
got to
it's
get through.
worked.
Whatever you got to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell all the men, like when they used to come to my office and everything, I have tissues sitting there. They look at me like, what is that for? You'll see.
You'll see.
Yeah, you'll see.
Right? You know what
Well,
I'm saying? And once
yeah.
that door closes and we're sitting there and we're just shooting a breeze, and I'm able to, sneak a few little things in there to help them think about some things. Oh yeah, I just slide the tissues on over there. They're like, I never cried like this before. I'm like, I know, right? It feels good.
I know. It's not bad.
Yeah,
It's not
it's
bad.
cathartic.
Doesn't it feel good? We do have a statement from Lynn Carter. People are often afraid of our loss and grief because they are afraid it might happen to them. So they shy away. They don't listen. They can't hold that space for the grieving.
Right.
And I
Agreed.
think that's pretty interesting because in a lot of ways that is so very true.
Well,
And again, it goes back to the individual. Understanding, like if you walk that path of grief and you have that understanding of the walk of grief, it makes it easier to hold space for the grieving.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that most of the time we want people who've never walked the path to hold the space.
Yep.
And so it becomes a conflict.
You can't. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of, oh, you should be here, a whole lot of expectations, a whole lot of this, that, and another.
Oh,
And
the shitting.
so
I'm
people take it
shitting.
personally.
Yep.
Right? People take it personally. And I can get that. I do understand that. But understand the person that you're asking to hold the space with. Is it a friend? You know what I'm saying? Or you know what I'm saying? Or is it someone who understands?
Yeah.
We want our friends to be there with us in our darkest moments,
Yeah.
right? The truth of the matter is, a lot of times that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen because just because you're going through something, your friend may say, hey, I got your back through and through. You know what I'm saying? No matter what you need, I'm here for you. I'm going to sit with you. But when things sometimes, I'm not going to say all the times, sometimes they get to a point to where they go, this is too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it still leaves you to deal with those things that are coming.
Mhm.
So I get that. I get that. Okay, you know what I'm saying? You can't ask everybody to understand the what you're going through, but sit with somebody who understands what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's going to make the biggest difference.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Your friends will always love you, but learn to love yourself first.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? And learn from people who can help you love yourself in those ways.
Yeah. And the other thing too that comes to mind is that when death changes the landscape, not only for ourselves, but for those around us, any death affects those individuals who we were close to. And What can change is the people who are capable of holding space for us. The people that we thought might have been capable of holding space for us are nowhere to be found. And the ones that aren't, we didn't think are capable, are the ones that step up. But too often, and particularly in early grief, we get caught up with those people who aren't there as opposed to the ones who are who there or who are there.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. If we can teach individuals or tell them that, look, the things are going to change, including the relationships in your life, that be aware of those people who are willing to step up, and the ones that can't step up, they, just like Tony said, may just not be capable of holding space at that time because
Right.
of their own insecurities with grief.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also
that's right.
I would add the way I've framed it is people either step up or they step out,
Mm-hmm.
and it can that flip is absolutely accurate, Dave.
Yeah.
I would the thing I would tail end onto that is that sometimes your friends and your family may have a good intention, but it's kind of hard for some folks to be present in a neutral way. They have history, they have baggage, they have an agenda, and they may not that they're not doing anything wrong, but they have a history with you.
Yep.
So they're going to have a certain expectation, a certain way of framing it. They're going to have some preconceived things that they're going to bring to the conversation,
Yep.
as opposed to sometimes it's a good thing, even though it can be tough to approach a stranger, not a random stranger on the subway, but to talk to a professional, a compassionate, skilled professional, but to talk to someone who has no agenda other than your healing and your
Right.
Yep.
your success.
And I think that's where we all come together in, because our objective is always the same. We want to see you heal.
Exactly.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Because we understand what it's like not to be, right? We're not broken, we're hurt. There's a huge difference in that. You know what I'm saying? Just changing those words. I am not a broken individual. For one,
Right.
I'm not a thing. I am not a thing. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? You can break things. You can hurt me. And so once I can understand that concept, I can now seek avenues of healing.
Yeah.
Right. And Lynn put something else up there. You know, she said that she found that she got more support from people that she didn't know very well, rather than, you know, from her own family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which that is actually, you know, don't take that personally. You know, do not take that personally. See, you're asking family and friends to understand your mindset and what you're going through. Whereas, you know what I'm saying, everybody has their own individual relationship with that grief, and they're going to find wow. Yeah. Don't ask me why that's up there, but wow. Okay.
Oh Lordy.
Yeah, somebody wants to wait. Not the right site for that, but
Moving
I
on.
appreciate
There we
your
go.
I really appreciate your enthusiasm, but wrong site.
Wrong site. Moving
Yeah,
on.
definitely wrong site. Mental health and dating do not go hand in hand. I
think that's a different podcast there.
That's a different topic.
Yeah, that's a whole
That's another topic.
podcast.
Yep.
You guys might want to go to the other one. The other one. This is not that one. Okay. Appreciate you though. But yes, the concept is that, you know what I'm saying, I am not broken.
Yeah.
I am not a broken arrow.
No.
Yeah.
I am not a thing to be broken. I am a human being. You will not break me. You can hurt me. You can hurt my heart beyond what I conceive it could be. And then I can take the time to understand and begin to heal from that.
That's right.
I have yet to meet a perfect human being,
Right.
somebody who has no issues, no lumps, no
I got issues.
whatever.
Right.
We all have that, and it's not a character flaw. It's
No.
actually one of the amazing, beautiful things that makes humanity so fascinating. Is every single person is unique and glorious and deserving of healing. You know,
Right.
whatever path they come from.
Yeah, and I'll sit with somebody. If somebody tells, I might say, "How are you doing today?" And they'll say, "Today sucks. I'm not having a good day." I'll sit with you in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody who says 24/7, "I'm the greatest day of my life." Well, no, nobody's happy 24/7.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nobody's happy 24. But
We
I'll
got a
sit.
great question coming in, and
Yes, I see that.
I think this is going to be one that we can dissect, and hopefully it gives this listener something. What does grief in a dysfunctional family look like? Whoa,
Whoa, that's a
right?
good one.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that is good. Thank you, Della. I want to
uh,
thank you for that because that is an excellent question. What does it look like?
Well, first off, define
Dysfunctional.
dysfunctional. Where
Right,
you,
right,
what exactly
right.
level of
You know,
dysfunction
like,
are you
we
talking
got
about?
yeah,
I think
it
all
depends on the
families on some
stress on the
level are a
level
little
and
dysfunctional.
the family dynamics. Yeah,
right.
Everybody's got family dynamics.
yep,
right.
yep.
Right. But what I just off the top of my head, what I would posit is that grief within that context of, a dysfunctional family has the context of things aren't working well.
Yeah.
Right. So grief is going to be yet another thing that doesn't work well in that process. So while people are figuring out the dysfunction, the grief may not even have room to be expressed, much
No.
less healed. So it can add to the number of things that that individual has to deal with.
Right.
So-
And I think to me in a dysfunctional family, there are rules of operation that don't allow for feelings to be expressed,
Mhm.
feelings to be validated, a person's grief to be validated, their humanness to be validated. And particularly in families where in a lot of dysfunctional families, you'll see both physical and emotional abandonment when
Yes.
Yes.
and that does not have a place for grief to go. And people who come from dysfunctional families who don't feel that anybody's physically or emotionally present, we're going to figure out what the rules are on their own. And usually it's not. It's usually they just won't know how to handle their grief in a healthy way because it hasn't been modeled for them, and the rules
Right.
of that family don't allow that to happen.
And it will often it'll shoot off into other directions.
Yep.
It'll be expressed in
Yes.
unhealthy ways, whether that's through addiction, acting out, all sorts of ways.
And
all sorts of ways.
And that'll impact the relationship choices and family systems that they align with as well too. Going
Right.
down if those rules aren't changed, if they
Yeah.
don't learn that there's a different method of operation.
Yeah.
Well,
But
because
I always say it's one thing that I've learned so many, literally hundreds of times. People only know what they know. So
exactly.
if you grow up in a
Yep.
dysfunctional
Yeah.
construct, you're going to deal with your grief dysfunctionally too.
Yep.
So it's, it becomes more tangled and it's, yeah. So,
And Nella, that is actually true. Yes, they do blame the family. The family always have to have a scapegoat.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be you. It could be you. It's not personal. So don't ever take it personal. You're just a person that they can blame for everything else. Now, if you know in your heart that you're not the source cause of all of this, you know what I'm saying? You can make a choice and you can eliminate yourself from that situation.
yeah.
Unless
Seek your
you're
healing
drawn-
elsewhere. Seek your
Right.
healing elsewhere.
Right. You can seek it elsewhere, right? You can make a
Yeah.
choice to remove yourself. And that's what I would always recommend. If you're going through something like that, I don't know. We lost Dave. I think
We
We
lost
lost Dave. That's all right. We love Dave.
we'll get him when he pops back in. But yeah, the family, a lot of times people will anoint a scapegoat so they can have someone to dump all of this stuff on so they don't have to take responsibility for their choices. Now,
Yeah.
that is not your responsibility. I know a lot of times that we want it to be something that we can fix as individuals, but it's not. It has nothing to do with you.
No.
Get that? So just keep that in your mind. It has nothing to do with you at all.
No.
One of the smartest things that I did for my dysfunctional family is move 500 miles away.
Exactly. You know, and I
Yeah.
don't have a dysfunctional family. My family loves each other. You know what I'm saying? I was the dysfunctional one because of my choices. Now, And I say that because I take accountability for the life that I've lived and the
Right.
choices that I've made. My family was never dysfunctional. I grew up in a great family, right? You know what I'm saying? Very, very tight knit. We loved each other. You know what I'm saying? To no one's end. Were we perfect? No, but we worked through it.
Yep.
It wasn't until I got older till I realized that, you know what I'm saying, moving away from all of that didn't really change anything of who I was. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I made the decision to go, okay, I need to change A through Z.
Yeah.
Then I need to reconform A through Z that fits me.
Yep.
Right. And you know what I'm saying? And that includes everything from taking care of my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health, my emotional health, being more in tune with the things that I'm going through. And Mark and I, we talked about this one time before, you know what I'm saying? To look at things in the moment. See, in the beginning, I used to look at everything in a whole.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh my God, I gotta do all of these different things. And I drove myself crazy. And it wasn't still I started compartmentalizing things into moments. In this moment, my grief is requiring me. In this moment, my mental health is requiring these things from me. And after that moment is gone, it is gone. I've extracted information from it to help me move forward, but also to help me serve others. So if I can extract that information and move forward, then those moments are just what they are.
Yep.
It's just moments that I cannot change.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? But I can benefit from.
And you know, they say our grief journey, they say one day at a time. Sometimes it's a 10
Minute.
minutes at a time or a minute at a time.
Mhm.
One
Or-
choice at a
Or
time.
one choice at a time. You break it down into smaller steps, it becomes less overwhelming.
Yeah.
All right. We do have one more question. And I know it's getting late and everything, and I love having these conversations. It seems like we never have enough time. It seems like we never have enough time, right? But
We'll just need to remind folks who we are at the end and
Yeah,
how to
yeah,
reach
most
us and all that sort of thing.
let's dive into this question real quick.
Yeah.
Della says, as a counselor, how do we approach the scapegoat?
Mm.
That's a good question, right? You know what I'm saying? Because how many times have we been a scapegoat?
That's right. I think one is that they're to let them know immediately that they're not responsible for anything that happened in their family. They
Yeah.
were basically, that was a role that was either cast onto them or they assumed because of other dynamics, and they were not responsible for the dysfunction in their family. That's the first thing, because it's to let them know that you were not responsible for what happened. That you were in a situation that was out of your control, that was based on what was going on with your parents, your legal guardians, and it was nothing that you were responsible for. You know, that's the first part of that. And to let them off the hook for anything that they felt they should have done or didn't do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was just reading this last one. I want to say, to the person that gave that, thank you very, very much.
Mhm.
And to go back to the scapegoat, because we've all played that role at some point in our life, right? You know what I'm saying? Unwillingly, right? And sometimes willingly,
Yeah.
depending on the situation. And to the person that feels like that they're a scapegoat, eliminate the word scapegoat. You're not a scapegoat.
No.
You're
Yeah.
a human being that just got caught up in a situation that you didn't intend to be in, right? You know what I'm saying? And you couldn't figure out a way to get out of.
Mhm.
That's all right, and that's perfectly fine. But now that you in a moment to where you understand that, make a choice, step outside of that.
Yeah.
And stop being everybody's scapegoat. Because I told an individual, I let someone else know a long time ago, if you are a people pleaser, not everyone deserves your people pleasing.
Mhm.
You do not have to conform to what someone else think that you need to give them,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? You know what I'm saying? I believe in, you know what I'm saying? Like, you treat people the way that you treat people good.
Yeah.
You treat people good. You don't have to treat people in a manner that disrespects you because it makes them feel good,
Yep.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You have to create that space to make yourself feel good. Do not put that responsibility on anyone else. It's not their responsibility. And as long as we can keep giving responsibility to everyone, you know what I'm saying, we'll always be dependent on everyone else to give us that.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So when you're talking about your mental health is exactly that. Be the thing that you need. Be the
Yep.
emotions that you need for the things that you need it for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And don't forget to seek your own healing path.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Different for everybody.
that's very important, but it takes people to help them along the way as well. People
Yeah.
with
Oh
compassion,
yeah.
with the heart of service, and want to see other people heal because we understand the benefits of seeing someone who has healed themselves, right? You know what I'm saying? We're honestly, for me, and this is just for me, I am just a guideline with the tools that I have to give to you, right? You know what I'm saying? It's up to you to use them
Yep.
however you see fit. Not the way that I see you using them, but the way that you see fit, because it's your life and it's individual. And it should be very, very personal as your mental health. It should be very, very personal, right?
Yeah.
This is your mental health should be
Yeah.
a selfish. You should be selfish in your mental health.
That's
You know what
right.
I'm saying? If a person takes you out of that, you need to get rid of that person. You know what I'm saying? I'm not driving. If you're not good for my mental health, I will walk away from you.
And
I
we,
promise you I will. I don't care if you're family or friend.
that's
You know what
right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not good for my mental health, I will get you out of my life
Yep.
as quick as possible because, for one, I am more important.
Well, and the other thing is we need to spread the message that individuals can empower themselves to be the
Yes,
co-creator of their own reality with the
Exactly.
universe and God as their guide.
right.
And that's all that matters. They can be empowered to do that. They can
Yeah,
create their own reality, could be the
As
co-creators of
much
their
as
reality.
people have been taught sometimes that they are powerless, when in fact they're more powerful than they realize. And
right.
they're more powerful. They are safer than they realize. They are stronger than they realize.
Mhm.
But teaching folks what that means and how to use it in a way that serves their path and their healing and their purpose is part of our calling, because none of us got to where we are without other folk helping us. You know, we if
Right.
like I said, 5 Clairs ago, you wouldn't have recognized me, but I'm blessed and lucky to have folks who helped and pulled and cared and molded my healing journey. And it is now that's part of our healing is being able to reach back and pull others forward with us,
Yep.
because ultimately we all pull together.
Yep.
Exactly.
We do.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like the human chain link. You
That's
know,
it.
if one goes up, the other one pulls the other one up, and we keep pulling each other up, right?
Yep.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. We should be connected in that way, especially through the things that we go through, because one person may be in a different situation that you're in. Does
Yes.
not mean that you cannot learn from this individual. Just don't rush yourself to be in that individual spot because you're going to miss steps, right? You're gonna miss the important things that's going to aid in your individual healing. So, I mean, we can sit around and we can listen to other people and how we got to where we're going, right? But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? You got to take a deep breath. You got to dig your heels in, you know what I'm saying? And realize that,
We
hey,
do a lot of breathing.
yeah, we do a lot of breathing, right? You know what I'm saying? Calming ourselves down and everything like that. And once you get to that point, take a
Yeah.
look at everything else around you. Prioritize yourself, right? You know what I'm saying? Prioritize the things that you do in your daily life. Come up with good daily rituals, habits. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Get rid of those
And
things
take
that
care
are
of
going to
yourself.
go against you and hinder you from moving forward, right? And then you begin to initiate those things on a daily basis.
Yeah.
On a daily
Yep.
basis, right? You know what I'm saying? Until it becomes a routine. Then it becomes second nature. You know what I'm saying? And I always tell people once you start treating yourself good and everything, it's going to be hard for you to allow to someone else to treat you bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
Mhm.
you have to treat yourself good first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Bet.
saying? In order to get that through. And we are, I could talk about this all day long. I promise you, and the hour and a half just goes by so fast. I want to thank everybody who has tuned in today and, shared questions with us and everything. I want to thank the panel for being up here, sharing their expertise. You guys will be able to contact with them on their platforms and everything. Do you guys have any words that you would like to give everyone before we sign off?
I can be reached at youcanhealyourgrief.com. My handle on Instagram is Fearless Grieving. And I just want to thank everybody for their wisdom and their vulnerability and their kindness. Those are three things that are priceless and not always easy to come by in this world. And they are things that are absolutely necessary to the human condition. And we're all better for it the more we can put it out into the world. So I, with deep respect to all the gentlemen on the panel, I will see you around the bend.
Thank you for being on, Claire. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was good. So I would echo what Claire said about the panel. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you, Tony, for inviting me and allowing me to be here and share. I can be reached at markshutter.com. I'm on all the social media platforms. You can either
all the social media.
Yeah, look for my name or MW Shutter at MW Shutter. Again, my book is out there. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those sorts of things. Yeah.
Book.
Yes.
Book.
Yes.
Little self-promo.
We got putting out
and
the
just
fire
like I
by
said,
Claire.
we're all on this journey together, but our
Yeah.
paths are a little differently. And I'm willing to come alongside people, and that's what I feel like God's called me to do. And whatever that looks like, I can't fix things for you, but I can come alongside you, and hopefully we can figure this thing out together. So,
And I just want to echo what Claire or Mark said. Tony, thanks for inviting me to be part of the panel. It was great to share space with Mark, with Claire, and with you as always. I can be reached. I'm on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I can be reached at psychologyprofessorandminister@gmail.com, or you can go to www.psychologyprofessorandminister.com and check us out there. And I think, just so I can be in lockstep with the panel, mine and Reverend Patty Farino's book, When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister, is out on Amazon. You can also, message me for a signed copy if you'd like that. I'll be more than happy to give you the details. And it's just been great sharing space. And I hope what we had to say helped at least one person out there and at least shift their perspective, because that's what it's about. It's about impact, and it's about the message. It's not about any one of us. It's about the message we can bring.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like my fellow panelists, I do not have a book just yet. I am writing my book. It's been a struggle for me, but you guys can you can find me on Facebook, Memories of Us, and we do grief support for men. So any men out there struggling, if you need a place to come and just sit and be able to talk with other men, be it a place to come and find us, and also find Mike Shutter, find Dave Roberts, and reach out to Claire as well. We're here for you. These panels are here for educational purposes to help you understand more of what you're going through. And if you have questions, we're here. We want to answer those questions. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and everybody who has given us questions and supported us. We see you guys in the next 2 weeks. We got another great panel coming up with another great topic, and that's going to be grieving through the holidays. How to care for yourself while you're grieving through the holidays. We got Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all of these things come up, and people are struggling to no end.
Yeah.
But it's just not the holidays. It's so much more going on. So stay tuned with us. We have so much more coming. We have so many more amazing panel members. And so we just want to take you on the ride with us and give you exactly the things that you need to keep moving forward in your healing journey. And with that being said, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Until next time, love you.
I love you too.
Peace and love.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace. Wishing everybody peace.